You'll notice I have 3 candles back there. And if you're very liturgical, you know that the 3rd candle on the Advent wreath is typically a pink one. And it's the candle for joy. And I have a pink candle right here ready, but I decided to use the red one for joy, because when I look at love, love is more of a comforting thing, where joy is an energizing thing. It is a bright thing. Joy is fuller and richer than most pinks that I know. And so I decided on a red candle for today, because in the midst of winter, in the midst of the challenge, joy is what allows us to feel something beyond just what that challenge is. Mary, the scripture we're supposed to read today, is called the Magnificat. And Mary spoke that, or at least the author of the tale gave this passage to her, where she is confronted with the challenge of, what are you going to do now? The angel comes and says, God would like to have the Messiah proceed from you. And she had to say, wait a second, what's that mean? And any of you who have gone through birth know that whatever there is on the other side of the birth, the passage of pregnancy and birth itself is not a simple process, and not without challenge, difficulty, and pain. But what gets you through that? The promise of what is to come. Something beyond just the moment. And that's what joy is about, is remembering the bigger picture, the longer picture, the deeper picture, and trying to figure out how to hold on to that. And so Mary says, my soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed. Now, I don't know about you, but there's not many 14-year-old girls that on a regular basis are worthy of blessed yet. I mean, I think they're all blessed people, but they're sometimes not easy. Are they at 14? And what she was facing, a very young pregnancy, life that was probably close to poverty level, was less than blessed, wasn't it? But somehow in the midst of that, she saw something more. Our reading today from Maya Angelou is just like Job. And if you know the story of Job, Job is going through a birth of sorts. Everything is going wrong. Everything is getting lost that he knew. Like moving from the womb, that nice safe space where everything is taken care of, and going down the birth canal to something unknown, he is losing all that he knew. And she equates those two, and she says, my Lord, long have I cried out to thee in the heat of the sun, the cool of the moon. My screams searched the heavens for thee. My God, when my blanket was nothing but dew, rags and bones were all I owned, I chanted your name, just like Job. Father, Father, my life give I gladly to thee. Deep rivers ahead, high mountains above, my soul wants only your love. But fear gathers round like wolves in the dark. Have you forgotten my name? O Lord, come to your child. O Lord, forget me not. You said to lean on your arm, and I'm leaning. You said to trust in your love, and I'm trusting. You said to call on your name, and I'm calling. I'm stepping out on your word. You said you'd be my protection, my only and glorious Savior, my beautiful rose of Sharon, and I'm stepping out on your word. Joy, joy, your word, joy, joy, the wonderful word of the Son of God. You said that you would take me to glory, to sit down at the welcome table, rejoice with my mother in heaven, and I'm stepping out on your word. into the alleys, into the byways, into the streets and the roads and the highways, past rumor mongers and midnight ramblers, past the liars and the cheaters and the gamblers, on your word, on your word, on the wonderful word of the Son of God. I'm stepping out on your word. I love that image. I love that progression that she tries to go through. And what she wrote there is not unlike many of the Psalms, the laments especially, where they're trying to figure out how to make sense out of less than sensible spaces. Right? Where is it that you are going through less than sensible spaces this year? And
less than sensible what?
Less than sensible spaces, easy spaces, spaces that don't make sense.
Okay.
And how is it that you're trying to find joy in the midst of that?
I'm trying to find joy just for the year to end.
For the year to end.
Start off with 2021.
Yeah.
And forget 2020.
I saw a song that one of the lines said, "I've had plenty 2020." I think we all have, haven't we? And I'm ready to, I don't know, we don't know what 2021 is, but at least it means 2020 is done.
Well, let's face it, can 2021 be any worse?
Yeah.
Besides the threat of nuclear war.
And Juan, sometimes that is the joy that we can do. Like when I've talked to friends who have some kind of bad diagnosis, sometimes they will say something like this, well, at least I don't have. And that's always a good thing, because no matter how much your malady is, there's things that you're not facing. And sometimes that's how we get through, is to remember that type of thing.
The Tucson Library has a lot of Maya Angelou's books, and I read a good number of them, maybe in 2018. And well, her life, his was quite something, and how she came to write. She was raped when she was rather young, and an uncle went and killed the man who did it. And she didn't speak for many years. She started writing then to her grandmother, who encouraged her, who didn't berate her for not speaking. And I remember that, stepping out on his word, and I had even written it down because of, the estrangement with my son had happened a year and a half before I read those books. And I lost track of that paper that had that phrase on stepping out on your word.
And here you have it.
And I love it. And I'm so thrilled to be reacquainted with it. But I've thought from time to time that I can be so caught up in myself, in my own misery, that I forget everyone has had something. And Maya Angelou had a pretty terrifically hard childhood. Others have had a good childhood and then got socked with something in their 20s and didn't know what to do with that, and then different decades. And then some people have something every decade of their life. But anyway, we all have something. And I get so much out of reading inspirational things that many people have written.
But much of inspiration ends up happening because people are seeing a larger picture than just the one in front of them, right? If you look at my picture, for example, you see the three candles, but hopefully those three candles represent more to you. That's why I've tried to describe why I chose red, why I chose the purple, because it means more to me than just that's there. And at least joy is trying to say that. In the midst of 2020, what allows you to see more than just that? Not because it's come to fruition yet, right? But just the announcement that a vaccine is available gives us some joy. I don't know, maybe I won't get it until April. I don't know how long the timeline will take, but at least gives us some joy in this moment, some uplifting, some energizing, which is part of what joy is.
I mentioned that I was getting this treatment for depression, and I am feeling a lot better. But
Good.
even before I started the TMS treatments, about a week before, in my down time, I got some inspiration about doing gratitude before I went to sleep every night. And I have done that before, but I don't know, I got out of the habit. And I have so much to be grateful for, especially when I read about all of these things with COVID. I really have had so much, and all the trials and tribulations for us in this country. If we stop a minute and start doing a gratitude list, it does put our own personal misery in a perspective. In my own personal, I'll keep it personal to me. It puts my own personal misery in a perspective.
But that is one of the exercises that the author asks us to do, is to make a list of 10 things we're grateful for, and then to add to it without repeating. Because we forget that. In the midst of challenges, we forget that larger picture. And at least part of joy is trying to remember that larger picture. As I read the other article, the other poem, just like Job, I remembered one of my very favorite poems of all time. It comes from Psalm 22. And I don't know if you know that, but I like it better than the psalm right after it, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And I like it because it feels more human. And it starts off kind of like Maya Angelou's poem, where she says, my Lord, my Lord. This one says, my God, my God. And this is the poem, the psalm that Jesus quoted on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Like with most of the Psalms, the first line kind of will bring up the remembrance of the whole poem. And this poem, this psalm, is an interesting one because it's a person going through times like we have. And we don't know exactly what he was going through, but it sounds like I don't want to go through it. Because he says this, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day and you do not answer, and by night, but find no rest. But here's why I like this poem. After he says that, then comes the second type of thing that happens. He begins this type of line. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel, and you, our ancestors, trusted, they trusted and you delivered. And so after saying, here's what's going wrong, he says, but here's where I'm beginning to see, and it's not even that he sees it yet, but he's trusting that there is something more. He's saying, this is the promise. But he goes back and says, but I'm a worm and I'm not human and scorned by others and despised by people. All who see me mock at me, they make mouths at me and shake their heads. So he goes from good to bad, back and forth. Yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe from my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near. And I love this because this speaks much of my journey, where there's been whatever it is that's besetting me, but at the same time, there's been sparkles of joy, sparkles of something more beyond that. In the midst of all this, what gives you a larger picture? What lifts you up in the midst of an undoubtedly most difficult year?
Just an old-fashioned word, Jim. It's called hope.
Yeah.
With
Old
hope.
fashioned? It's an old fashioned word.
About the rest of you?
Well, fellowship with other people.
It helps a lot, doesn't it? And I think that's part of why, Judith, this year is so difficult, is in the midst of most of the challenges we've gone through, sometimes we've been able to come together, give each other a hug. And this year we've had to give each other hugs very differently. And in the midst of isolation, some of our typical ways of being with each other aren't quite the same, are they?
No.
And so we've had to reinvent both ourselves and our interactions. But one thing I know about joy is that joy isn't a stay the way you are type of event. Joy calls us toward. And we often take the easier, I'll just sit here under this tree and die type of response. This is okay, I'm all right here. But joy kind of draws us towards, and it gives us the energy to take another step, doesn't it?
I've been finding a lot of joy in staying home, actually. I love saving money on gas. It's a great opportunity to write, to think, to pray, to meditate, to enjoy the garden. I've become a real homebody this year, cleaning out closets and drawers and boxes. And I delight in going to the grocery store, wearing my mask, staying 6 feet apart. And something has changed this year with my relationships, I'm sure with everybody's relationships. But it seems like a lot of static has been eliminated, and the relationships I do have deepened because people are more aware of the preciousness of life.
Nice, thank you. My mom is also one of those who isolation is not as hard for her. She's a good introvert. I come by my introversion honestly, and she is there in her space, quilting and doing what she does, reading her books, but you know, the challenge about that is that she doesn't have a housemate that she has to somehow live with during all of that. So sometimes when you're stuck,
And my angel Juanito. Yes, I think it would be different if I was alone. I'm very grateful to be sharing the home with someone I adore and get along with most of the time.
but
And
sometimes that is the joy, that you have somebody who, this may be a tough road, but I'm walking it with. Just that.
It would be very different if I was alone, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gives you enough of enough energy, enough wings to carry you through. Yeah. How about the rest? Oh, go ahead.
Motivation to keep going.
Motivation. That's at least part of what joy is.
Oh, you mean the young chick that you live with? She gives you motivation.
Keep me going.
Yeah.
I got a great partner, Jim, really. I wake up in the morning, I say, thank you for another day.
Yeah.
It's my city that keeps me going.
See, but that's choosing to see and acknowledge the joy rather than all the pain. I was just talking with Ed Lee. We were talking about bodies and how my body is not quite the way it was 20 years ago. I don't know, maybe the rest of you haven't experienced
Wow. Wow.
and so you have to find other things that lift you up than the fact that your body is the perfect, human specimen, right? Sometimes in our 20s we can kind of pretend that, but as we go along we have to find other spaces of strength.
Yeah, has that ankle of yours healed?
It's healing. It's healing. I haven't been running as much because of it, but I went on a half-mile little walk with my puppy dog the night before, and it went really well. So I'm getting there. But I just have to be more aware of things like that than before. Dang it. The songs that we had to listen to kind of speak to this, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to speak into the challenge of life. And like the one that says, Mary, don't you weep. And part of the way that it says that is it says, remember what happened at the Red Sea, kind of thing. Pharaoh and his army drowned, right? And whatever that big thing that was the obstacle at that point ceased to be the obstacle. And so whatever the challenge is from you, right? Speaking to Mary as she's trying to figure out, does she want to have this baby? Kind of saying, remember that it will not be just the challenge you think it is. And don't get me wrong, every kid is a challenge, right? Every kid brings challenge and difficulties. And so it's not saying it's only joy, but it says that joy is there along with.
Hey, Sue, I think I saw you. Speak to us, O wise woman.
There you go.
There I am, unmuted.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, good morning. What wise woman? Whoa, little pressure on that one, huh?
It's true. It's true.
It's true. I don't know. Thank you, but I don't know. I was thinking about, particularly when back a few minutes ago when Jim mentioned the vaccine. I thought how these words of Advent, hope, one mentioned hope, gives us hope. Peace, the vaccine is giving, I hope, some of us some peace in knowing that in the future we'll be joyful because this whole, hopefully, thing will be over. I think it's going to take time. So I've looked at those three words, and out of all this, what comes the greatest gift of all? And I firmly believe that's love. So I that's what I've been sitting here thinking about and listening to you all.
We're not talking about love till next week, Sue. Quit jumping.
I know. I know.
Love.
Today.
I'm just jumping ahead.
Preview. It's a
I'm looking
sneak
into the
peek.
future. I'm joyful of knowing what's coming. How's that?
But part of what you're talking about is all these things: hope, peace, joy, love, all of what I call the Christian four-letter words. They're not simple, are they?
No.
They're not disconnected. Holding on to joy does help love. Holding on to love does help peace. They are connected to each other.
Mhm.
Well, I was surprised when I got out my Mary, don't you weep. I thought it had to do with the Bible, but it's all about the Civil War.
Well, because it's anything that's in the Bible often is a repeated storyline. Okay, because they tried to speak. They weren't telling just individual stories. They were also telling the types of things that often happen. I believe that much of the Bible came from stories around the campfire. that were the generalized stories of how things happened. And so the last apocalypse that happened in America, Civil War, it's not the last one, but the huge one that happened was the Civil War. And so out of that emerged all kinds of stories, all kinds of songs that tried to make sense of it, and make sense of us. The other song that kind of goes along with this, Judith, is the song Joy to the World. Do you know that song?
Yeah, that's right here.
Yeah. Joy to the World, we often call a Christmas song. And does everyone know it's not? It's not talking about it's not talking about the birth that happened long ago. It's not joy to the world, the Savior came long ago. It's joy to the world, the Savior is come right now. It's a second coming type of song, not a first coming. And it's talking in the present tense about how the baby that we celebrate, it didn't happen, but is happening. That even in the midst of whatever you're going through, the Civil War, if you will, that the baby is being born still. And so it's how do we announce the Christ in this moment? So you might think about like your life in the midst of COVID, in the midst of a challenging election year, in the midst of social unrest and racial tension. What has announced presence of God in the midst of all that? Who spoke to you some idea of that presence?
Good question.
That's at least part of where joy comes from, isn't it? I'll tell you one of the places. This morning, I got Margie's book. She brought it to me, and I haven't read the book, so that's not my joy thing yet. It might be, but Margie is. Because Margie, every single week, almost from the beginning of the pandemic, has been holding up Saturday mornings as a space where we come and bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and she brings them down to Casa Maria every single week. That's a space to me that speaks joy, because she is speaking something larger, right?
Yes.
So what else has helped you to see more?
That's a good one, Jim.
Not
You know,
been the easiest year to find joy, has it?
yeah.
I stay in touch with a number of veterans. I write them, we Facebook, I send cards. I have a ministry where I made up cards actually that say, how are you doing? And I send them out to veterans. It's Juan's work originally that rubbed off on me. And I love the Motley Crew. So, veterans.
Yeah, a lot of the veterans have started using Facebook as social media. I don't have Facebook. It takes up a lot of time, and I got other things I have to do. But my Sarita has really been in there keeping in touch with all my fellow veterans, and they all love her. She's great. And I appreciate the fact she is supporting them. We both support all veterans.
Yeah. And being able to see that person, and this is true of any person, being able to see that person for the all the power that they brought to life, right? What they did decades ago that brought something to life. Is that an important thing, isn't it?
Yes.
How about the rest of you?
Well, one of the things that gives me joy is being able to do these classes with St. Francis and the Sunday services. I've well, I sang with a choir with a little church near me 20 years ago, and they're not online. It's a small church. It's an African American church, and they just don't have the resources. I've looked at other churches in the area, and some of them are doing Zoom. I'm not on Facebook either. I can't check out those. They're not resonating with me. And now my high school year, I think I might have mentioned this before, I might be repeating myself. In my high school years, I lived right across the street from was the first Presbyterian church in Maryland, like 1690 or something. Not the original church, the one that's there now is maybe 200 years old. It's now majority immigrants or refugees, I don't know, from Cameroon, and they are online, and you can listen to them by Zoom, by Facebook, and by a third way. They are really on top of all the tech stuff, and the children from one home read the word, and this family from another home will sing some traditional African praise songs with the hand clapping. It's all a cappella. And I've been kind of enjoying that. Now that's a half an hour from where I live. And they're not meeting in the little church where I went to. They're meeting in what used to be our community hall. But the church has grown out of the little original church. And they're meeting in this community hall, which, it's painted cinder block. I like a church to feel like a church. I'm so spoiled by St. Francis and the view out the glass windows of the mountains and
The view that I call why nobody looks at me anymore.
That's right. Sorry, you're not the number one, viewing spot. But anyway, so I have a lot of joy. I mean, this is a blessing. Wow, that I can Zoom a church that really did speak to me, and I'm 2,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Holy cow. When I think about, Jim, you like movies. And I can't remember what it's called, but this is Tommy Lee Jones as some ne'er-do-well, and it's the woman who was in Boys Don't Cry. She played
Hilary Swank.
Yeah, in the movie she is accepted. No one else stood up to do it, to drive 4 women or 3 women who have absolutely lost their minds in the early West, in the barrenness of the West and the misery of being alone for months and months. And do you know that story?
Mm-hmm.
It's quite something. It's quite something. You can't say it's got a great ending. I should have seen it coming, maybe. And why did I start talking about that? I don't even know. I don't know.
But not all movies and not all stories have perfect endings.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Joy is not
Oh,
all.
what I started to say, see if I could just finish my thought.
Yeah.
When I saw that movie and I'm thinking, oh man, you were sitting here thinking what a bummer it is to be alone and you haven't had an opportunity to make new acquaintances here because of COVID in the way that I usually would have. Suppose I'd been one of these women living on the plains of Oklahoma or Nebraska. Holy cow, how can I complain when I can view churches from all around the country and play it again and again if I want?
I had very stark realization that came to me today, not today, a couple days ago. when somebody responded to something we'd posted on Facebook. It was one of our first not all together services. The trio was there, and Mike was there, and Judy was there, and I were there, but I think we were the only ones in the whole celebration space. We'd just been told by Bishop Bob to not be all together. And then I looked, and the comments had the little time notation, and it said 37 weeks ago. So we've been doing this separation thing for 37 weeks, right? And it just hit me like, oh my God, that's so much more than what I wish it would be. So much more than what I want it to be. And yet, what you're saying, Melanie, same as what I feel, we haven't lost everything because it's been 37 weeks, not the way we want. We've given moments of a glimpse of something more to each other, haven't we? And we've kept our connection, our community with each other in the midst of it. And I think that that's what we have to do. Think about when somebody is dealing with the grief of death, for example, which definitely puts an awful lot of pressure on them to be able to see truth. And yet somehow we help each other through those times, don't we? Not by solving the time, but by being the community around each other in the midst of the time. Like the little sparkly lights we see this time of year that light up the darkness and tell us a different story. I think that's what joy is trying to do, is trying to say, whatever's going on around you, it's not all.
Jim, you mentioned death, and you know this, that I'll keep this short, but my estranged brother committed suicide this summer, and a month ago I found out, and I went into a place of deep grief that surprised me because we had been apart a lot of my life. But some miraculous things came out of that. I mean, if you can imagine death, suicide, a sibling. And I learned lots about forgiveness, forgiving him as my childhood abuser. And my sister and I, as you predicted, you said we might get closer now that her twin was deceased. We've been writing every few days. She doesn't want to talk about the death, the suicide, because she was taking care of my brother at the end of his life when he had cancer. But I mean, there was pain and sorrow and grief, but as if my angels turned me around to look at things that I never had looked at or felt. And forgiveness was one of those feelings.
Thank you. You reminded me of part of the other poem we were supposed to read. It's called Annunciation, and it's kind of speaking to the Mary story and what she had to do. And it asks this question: aren't there annunciations of one sort or another in most lives? Some unwillingly undertake great destinies, enact them in sullen pride, uncomprehending. But more often, those moments when roads of light and storm open from darkness in a woman or man are turned away from in dread, in a wave of weakness, in despair, and with relief. Ordinary lives continue. God does not spite them, but the gates close, the pathway vanishes. And that to me is the sad part of things, is often we sit in those spaces and the pathway vanishes. But if we choose to see joy in that moment, it doesn't. And we move towards it. And something opens up rather than close down. And so like with the Mary story, she could have said yes or no. That's the point of the poem. And she says yes, so that in spite of whatever the difficulties are, something opens up in the world. And what I hear you saying is that what had been closed before your brother's death opened up.
What a surprise.
Yeah, because you said yes.
Yes.
Yes is a powerful word, isn't it?
Mm.
The problem is that oftentimes what you're saying yes to is a challenge. Because the joy flickers somewhere a ways away. And you have to figure out how to make the journey to get there. I use a song tomorrow about the three wise men. I know it's not that's supposed to be after Christmas sometime, but they chose to make the journey to bring something to that baby, joy, if you will. But it took a while to get from here to there. They had to go in search of it, and that journey that joy calls out of us is an important spiritual space. So as a country, in the midst of COVID, I think we're taking a journey, and it has been a difficult journey. You might have noticed that some of your companions on the journey do not welcome your presence as much as you wish they would. In the midst of some of the political things, we have found more distance between us than closeness. But what do we do to change that? How do we become the singular beloved community? Right? Not that I am and you're not, but how do we become the community that we ought to be? Not in the smallest sense, but in the largest sense of things. I think it's joy that can help begin to stitch that together, but we each have to get past our smaller stories.
Mhm.
We need to continue working together.
And working together.
Yeah, towards that goal, the bigger community.
And as a country, I think we've sometimes forgotten just our basic motto: united, we stand. Right? Because all of us have said something along the line, if you don't like our country, get out. We don't quite say it that way, but we all kind of feel that way, right? When somebody seems to be pushing some ideal for it that I don't understand or agree with. And yet what we've always been, even in the midst of our worst times, is we've been that which has helped us to look and think larger than just the small narratives that are out there. And getting to the largest place will always challenge us, won't it? I had a good friend of mine named Ray who once told me a story that I just loved. And the essence of the story is this: that he's going along on a cliff and he hears this voice that says, jump. So, but wait, if I jump, I'll crash. And the voice comes back and says, no, jump and build your wings as you fall. And essentially that's part of what joy calls us to do. It says you're able to, you just don't know you're able to yet. And it energizes us to attempt what is difficult, not knowing how it's going to come out, but knowing that it is a truth.
I really think that the all of you on the celebration team, you took that jump. 37 weeks ago, you didn't know what online services were going to be like, and look what's come about. It's joyful. It's wonderful. It's helped our faith community and others around the country. Like Melanie, she can be there with us now, and that brings great joy, I think. And yeah, we're a little church on the corner, but look what we've done. Look what's been accomplished.
Well, and frankly, I love some of the larger community that we've rediscovered.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just people who have been stuck more by themselves, like the Judy Wests of the world, who only lives a couple miles from the church, but can't get out of her apartment that much. And it's real easy to forget about her, but this has allowed her to continue to be connected to us anew. Right? And so it doesn't even have to be, one coast to the other like Melanie is.
Right.
Who have we lost connection to? But it means that we've had to learn, and grow
And work together
and work together. That's right.
to make all of it happen. And I just want to say it was with great joy that our choir was on the news last night.
Last night, if you didn't get to see it,
Oh,
I will.
Oh,
I've got a link to it, and I will try to make that available so that you can click on it and see. We were almost kind of the lead story, not quite. You know what leads all the time is the COVID numbers.
right.
And as soon as they finished with the COVID numbers, they said, "But let us tell you something good,"
Yep.
right? And it was our choir saying, in the midst of it, this is what we're doing.
It was great.
So,
Yes. Right. And our full name on the, what do they call that? The trailer?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the bottom. That was, yeah. This
So-
is who we are. Come be with us. Yeah.
Yep. So it was really kind of cool story.
It's very good.
The hard part about anything like this is it feels like we were forced into it. But how much of this is an invitation in reality? It felt like a forcing. Oh, yeah, you have to go hide in your own house. Yeah, you have to go do all this stuff. But maybe it's an invitation to become more than what we have been.
Yes, Jim, we have adapted.
Yeah,
And that adaptation means better communications and possibly even the ability to get along even better.
yeah,
We now have better communications.
absolutely. If we choose to take it that way.
Yes.
Because we can take it as the obstacle that's in our path and fight it all the way. Or we can say, what is this moment calling out of us?
I'm assuming that Ross and Sarah are singing with the choir from Colorado.
They not with the choir yet, because she's doing a different process, but she's been
Right.
singing with TLS. She's been singing with the Raggedy Band.
Oh, the Raggedy Band. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Raggedy Band is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
So, I'm singing with the Threshold Choir and the Tucson Choir and the International Choir. It's amazing with the technology.
Joe's been bringing people literally from one coast to another together in the Raggedy Band. Is that crazy? I kind of just like that.
Brings great joy.
It does. So bottom line about joy is that it is the energizing thing that draws us towards more. So who's been the people who have filled your life with joy in the past? Who taught you a larger vision? Who helped you to see something beyond yourself? For me, part of that person was a man named James Leonard. He was my high school track coach. And he helped me to know more about Jim than what Jim himself saw. And he taught me joy. Sometimes it was in stupid ways. He used to joke with a friend of mine named Steve Green, when we were doing something really difficult, something that's kind of that make you throw up at the end of it type of thing. He said, Steve, come on, this is easier than eating ice cream. Because Steve was violently allergic to ice cream. And it was just, yep, this is difficult, but who is it for you that has taught you joy in the midst of things?
I don't know that I would describe it as joy, but this church I mentioned that when I lived across, we moved from Baltimore City to Baltimore County, and it was an isolated little part of the county, no young people my age. But the pastor of that church, I babysat the children, and I just felt like he really took an interest in me at an awkward time and awkward age. So that was a beautiful gift. I don't remember feeling like jumping for joy, but it's someone who took an interest, and it was, I think that's part of why I've been enjoying the services, and I've driven by the church. I went last weekend for drive-by communion.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, little tiny cup. And when you open it, you peel it off. The wafer is in the top, hermetically sealed, protected from the not even a teaspoon of juice that's in the cup. And then you peel the next layer off, and there's the cup of juice.
Yeah, we have some of those.
And I'm not even a big, communion to me, they talk about the blood and body of Christ, and that's not where I am with communion. It's the breaking of bread with people similar to you, to your thoughts about faith, I guess. So I would just keep my opinion to myself, should I ever talk to these folks. But it's it's a 30-minute drive. If I take the back roads, it's pretty. Go over the Reservoir Bridge, and so it's an outing. I probably wouldn't have done that if not for COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. And it draws you beyond.
I was thinking about joy in terms of transformation. And this year with St. Francis, there's been this whole transformation because of online services. And again, for me, it's going deeper because we aren't able to hug. So the connections we're making online are different. Some of St. Fran's services, I think, are just so powerful. And I'm paying attention in a different way.
That's what I was going to say, Sarah, is sometimes it's not because I'm necessarily saying something more insightful. It's that you're listening differently. Does that make sense? I think it's both those two things. I think it's intentionality and it's attention.
Well, there are times when I think your commentaries / sermons are different. But I'm different.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right, you win. But I was also wondering to myself, why is it that I brought up this story of forgiveness when the topic is joy? And I think that's because I'm witnessing within myself a transformation.
Yeah.
And next week, as we've all pointed out, is about love. so there have been some major shifts within me, but there have been major shifts, I think, Jim, within you, within everybody this year. Major shifts in terms of awareness about racism or COVID,
Mhm.
a lot of shifts going on. And when I go deeper and grow and change and become more aware and can do forgiveness or love differently, that brings me joy.
And I think the word that you used, transformation, is a really important word, because all of these four-letter words, hope and joy and love and peace, all of the Advent words, ultimately are transformative words, aren't they? They don't let you sit in wherever you were. They bring you beyond in some way or another. And you can fight that process, or you can allow it to carry you forward.
There are some of your commentaries that inspire me to vacuum or dust during those.
Never-
Oh, well,
I've
But
never
you want to
had to,
share
like,
them with me?
I've never had to like listen to my commentaries in the same way as I do now. Like on Sunday mornings, I'm listening to myself as the preacher. I get to be the audience and the preacher at once, and I go, this is a little different. So sometimes I critique a lot. Oh, he didn't say that very well. I never say me. He didn't say that very well. It was me.
Well, this is not what I meant.
That's not what I meant. But part of what joy is, I want to end with Maya Angelou's poem, her other poem that we were assigned to read for this week. And it's an amazing poem. It's Still I Rise, probably her most famous poem, my favorite in many ways. But I love it because it just says, whatever it is that today is telling me, whatever it is that Juan is telling me, whatever it is that life is telling me, I choose to see something more than just that. And I think that's what joy is. The joy is seeing beyond the today, beyond the enemy, beyond everything, and seeing something more. So it says this: you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like raindrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't take it awful hard, because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear. I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. If we could all, every single moment, whatever the challenge, remember to do that, then we would truly be the joyful people that we could be. Right? Thank you for your time today. Next week, we can talk about love. Go ahead, Judith.
Thank you, Jim.
Gracias.
All right.
Bye, everybody have a good, safe week.
All right, you too.
Yeah.
Arrivederci.
Bye-bye.
Bye.